9 elected officials.
All right, we are live streaming.
Oh, we are? Okay.
Yeah, I'll pause it, or
All right.
the video's not up. Lauren, I'm gonna turn off the webcam if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, please.
Otherwise.
Am I on mute? These is right now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
Here's what you said.
how about now?
Yeah. Okay, what she did? She was muted, her mic was muted. Oh, that was it?
Oh, okay.
What, now, as long as she's not muted,
So
and
only,
she's connected into the,
I'm in the system.
she's in the
I'm-
system, I'm just
You
random.
want to make sure yours stays muted? Is that like?
So I want to make sure. Anytime I talk, I'm just going to be talking into the. Okay, that's good. All right, cool. I guess we should test all.
Yeah,
of
go
these.
check them all, because we might, I can't test them because I'm not 100% sure.
You know, can you hear me?
Wait, I think I did.
It's not coming through this one. The light's on. Hello?
It's like, I can't hear you that well.
Yeah, it's not coming through these ones.
All right, let me see that one. We'll see if we can.
Okay, this one appears.
Yeah.
This one is flashing red,
Yeah, that one's not good.
but this one's working. And this one,
What's not working?
So we have two that aren't working?
Three, I think.
Three.
do you know where the express building is?
Yeah. Dan, do you know the code for bathrooms here in this building?
These should be open to the public.
Should we open?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So we drove in today because we had some new people coming on Raleigh too, so. Let's just put these,
Sitting in the back?
yeah, probably. Unfortunately, we have to be in this classroom style as opposed to something like a U.
Okay.
So we're just gonna have to, I would put the snacks maybe towards the back. Yeah. Hey, Ellen, how did you get into that?
Men's 314.
314.
Women's is 413. So we've got to
Wait,
get a
314 or 413?
314.
Okay.
You.
314, all right.
Did they put locks on these?
Yes.
They used to be open to the public.
Figure all this out. Look at all these meetings.
In the wedding.
Good.
Hello, how are you?
James, Ellen.
Nice to meet you in person.
Yes. Did you see that message from Wendy?
Yeah, so
She didn't follow up with me, so I don't know
she'll be late.
if she comes. Otherwise, she'll just be at home logging in. on my phone.
This is like convenient for you.
Yeah.
And I got a message, I got a voicemail from Charlie Reese saying he would have to leave early at 2:45.
That's the fun part.
I was gonna run some checks first. Did you get a chance to look at the changes I made to the mural? I just wanted to check it with you.
I don't deal with these last minute things.
I get it.
It's on the right track.
I don't know how. She did not respond.
Let's move.
I know, because you guys keep updating that constantly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can you imagine if we tried to do it on Saturday?
yeah. And nobody wanted, it looked like this day would work for everyone.
It looked like a very, yeah.
Yeah.
How'd it go this
Does.
It went okay. We didn't come to any. Need more meetings, you know? Like,
Dustin.
people to-
Yeah, I just put those stickies because you said
does
Stacy took
the,
notes, but I can delete them.
Are you guys starting to talk about?
Dustin.
That's starting to conversation.
Yeah, but we don't really, there's a lot of uncertainty.
Sure.
Yeah, but,
Oh,
You
wait,
don't want to rely on it.
right,
that was copied and pasted from the outcome.
sure, we don't have. the-
That's what I meant,
That's
like
what
that would
everyone's-
really allay a lot of issues. Locally.
Yeah, but we can get that money.
So did you watch the, did you attend the webinar last night? It felt.
Dustin.
You did?
I did, just to listen. I didn't know what it was about, but it felt very propaganda-ish.
Yeah.
I was like kind of blown away.
That's what I was trying to do.
But there was a lot, I don't know who did the work in terms of the affordable housing and economic development potential. Was that a part of the SDV work?
So
So,
how, do I need to stand?
John Hodges couple at Triangle J did a lot of the affordable housing stuff.
Is there, what is the camera?
Dustin,
So there's,
there's two cameras.
So some consultant for the
Mhm.
economic impacts.
Okay.
Gotcha.
but if you want people to hear you,
It's,
I gotta be a
On Zoom.
microphone.
It was different
Yeah.
stories, obviously across the triangle, it was very different stories. But it was interesting because Go Triangle was one
Guess I should probably rename
tell that
myself.
story,
Yeah.
Dustin,
not staff or.
I was able to recover one of the three that weren't working. I'm not gonna have any more.
Not local stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Or should I just call, like, should I still give myself a name or should I just be like, conference host?
I think that works.
They're very focused on delivering that project. They see it as essential to their whole
Yeah, my
organization's
future
future.
on, be connected in the
I
system.
did not, I just want to make sure I had you guys down yesterday, if you felt that way on the call, when I was noting.
So we have, I'm sorry, I'll let you. Sorry, let me skew.
Okay, so I could just.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of, parking.
Oh, look at that.
And like,
Okay.
sign and signal stuff.
Yes, I don't know how much you want to try to do
Oh,
because
probably not too
it
much.
isn't the smoothest.
I'll be sharing my
And,
screen
but go,
and.
go ahead and switch cameras because the other camera's way off to the side. Or it's out. Yeah, just, so it's pointing at the point. You probably want to point here to the podium.
Oh, man.
And there might not be any. So,
Yeah. You just close the door.
Yeah, but I'm set, again, I'm not.
You're having fun.
I'm not planning.
So funny.
Adam, I've got to. I would actually.
How we doing, James?
Hey, hello, come on in.
Yes.
Okay, some masks. Come on in.
Here for Sally, right?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, I'm Warren Miller. Facilitator today.
I don't think back where the laptop is, really sit in front of me, so.
That'd be perfect.
you can have-
How you doing?
Oh, good. Good afternoon. Can you hear me, Warren?
Good afternoon, Will. This is Brenda Howard, and I hear you.
Oh, good. Yeah, I see you. Thank you. I was beginning to think I was the only one who was going to be attending virtually. I misunderstood. I did not realize this was an in-person meeting.
I didn't either, because when I saw, I was just reading it a minute ago and went, oh, oops.
Yeah, well, it was always going to be impossible for me to do it. I've got something right after this. I couldn't possibly have gotten back from Durham to where I need to be in Raleigh in time, but I would certainly have been there at least for most of it if I had, I guess, been more attentive. I feel kind of sheepish.
Yeah, me too. I didn't read it.
How you doing? You ready for Thanksgiving?
I am. I'm ready to hang out with my kids. Oh God, you know what? This is supposed to last till 5 o'clock.
I think till 4.
I've got to go get my shot.
Oh yeah. Well, no, that's urgently.
Yeah, so I will probably jet out of here early so I can go get that shot.
I got it. I'll be so happy when we are all meeting in person, Brenda. I look forward to spending some time with you.
Yeah, and we haven't even started our board meetings in person yet. So, you know, we've had a whole year of new commissioners that have never even had a meeting in the chamber. So,
Exactly.
yeah, but you know, we're just trying to keep everybody safe here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've all had our boosters here, I'm glad to say.
Yeah, hopefully it'll change pretty soon.
Hey, Warren, are we coming through here? I don't think he can hear me yet. I hope you're right, Brenda. The sooner the better that we meet.
Yeah, you know, the numbers have flattened out. As long as it stays flat, we'll be okay.
Yeah. Although I read some places are not doing that well.
I know.
I don't know what our vaccination rates are here in North Carolina. I should know.
I think we're around 70%.
That's pretty good. Does that include the booster?
I don't know about the booster. That's why I got to go get mine.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Well, I see Meg and Aaron and Sandra. Not sure they can hear me.
We can hear you. Good
We
afternoon.
can hear you. Hi, Will. Hi, everybody.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yep, hello.
Should I start? Ready?
So Maddie, you need to turn off the microphone.
I just unmuted. So I'm running, oh wait, actually.
Wow.
Like, okay, now.
Even if they're all vaccinated and
Piece
everything?
to her, yeah, we're all vaccinated. They just, you know, they have, that's where
You should be running red.
like, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, sure. So they're just stricter because they didn't have.
Yeah.
And frankly, probably because it's in Wilmington, it's so. So community. service.
Yeah.
Getting
yelled at by county staff.
So-
It was awesome.
Really?
You should be able to hear.
The only reason I took you read it out is because I couldn't remember.
Sorry?
Church history class, and it's this birthday. I wasn't sure. Take it down, man.
No, I ordered my turkey.
My whole, it's just, a few years ago I did that. Oh my God. It was expensive, but it was cool.
I went to the door.
So-
Never been in.
Got a turkey ordered from Weaver Street. Just did the usual shopping, got it by the
Now, from New York, what kind of stuff do you do?
Oh, I thought you were talking about.
cornbread with all kinds of
Right
good stuff in
here,
it.
You've also
That's
been,
very southern, isn't it?
but you also been there because where they.
That's not where my husband's from, Connecticut, New Jersey, that's not where he's from.
I buy the Pepperidge Farm
I'm not gonna
cornbread
be
stuff,
able to-
and then, you know, I'll
Anyway, keep
saute
going.
peppers and onions, a lot of
People
mushrooms,
yelled at me.
probably get some
I had to
turkey
get
sausage
to go in the
and
building.
fennel. I used to
I
do
go
it
in the
instead of
building,
celery,
do
because
you have a
it's more
ticket?
taste.
I have to go get a ticket. Where do I do that? In the parking lot across the
I don't like
street.
to
Okay,
see
let's
it.
do this.
Yeah. And then, you know, I
Walked over, waited in line.
and I'll make sweet
Some guy
potatoes, you
read
know.
me 3
I don't like
related
seeing
questions.
We make turkey breast,
And then handed me a ticket to a
and then we
script.
make homemade pizza, and just
Care.
homemade pizza.
Okay, whatever works.
I went around,
I get
tried to get the lady my ticket, but you don't give me the ticket, you get
What
my
was I cooking
security
there
card.
tomorrow?
Okay.
I want to take
You
your
want to buy
time.
good pie?
Yes, I can cook
To go on a place that I never.
I was
apple, cherry.
My temperature went over, put my ticket in a bin with 5,000
You
other.
can order from Google
I
Hubs.
need to go there.
Then went to security. They emptied my pockets, put all my backpack.
You know, because they have one in Eastgate.
Yeah, I was in there last
And I
week.
wandered around a couple minutes,
Since
couldn't find the first
pre-COVID.
portion.
Google Hubs,
And I
we
bought like $30
ordered.
of
And I
treats.
waited in line
Oh
for
my gosh.
information.
We ordered from Google Hubs a couple of years
The
ago.
lady was very nice.
And I don't know if they're doing it this
I went
year.
to find it, she said it's down, this year it's down on the right, so I went down there, I went too far, security guard yelled at me.
I love their.
And the other security guard yelled at me,
So
how high,
another
she meant
option.
over here, yeah, that light's
Bring it
out.
back, they bring it out.
Anyway, it was a lovely experience.
But I live right there by people. so
Yeah.
I stop there.
Love getting courtesy at our.
I'm not a cook, my mother.
Well, everyone
I-
just
I'll-
want to
I'll-
test to see.
Weekend is on the.
I'll do all the cooking for Thanksgiving.
My husband does the stuffing and the turkey.
And I'll make Brussels
Did you see
sprouts.
the,
Ooh,
e-bike
carrots.
announcement that Darby made today?
Yum. What about desserts? What do you do?
E-bikes,
You
you work
you make
downtown.
pie or do you?
No, I don't bake, I cook.
Okay, I bake, I don't have much.
I wish that Shanta told me before this happened.
I'm so would be.
I
I'm
think
good
it's
at
it's through the Bloomberg Foundation.
I haven't baked anything in years and years and years. But I do all the cooking in our family.
They can't hear me through the headset. What are you trying to do, Maddie?
My husband and I was.
It's working, and I don't know what I want.
We get takeout probably once, at least once a year.
Yeah,
Once a
yeah.
year.
Way
Just two of us
to-
That's
out.
this. That's good.
Here, next one. Oh,
Actually, here.
Are you, have you
Yeah,
felt
right.
comfortable going back to the movies?
Oh, yeah, to what?
The movies?
Not yet, I haven't gone. I wasn't going. I've been meaning to, it's like.
Provide employees with a free.
We're still struggling here. We can't hear, they can't hear us.
Like, tell them it means.
You know, and these packages require inclusive vaccination.
That's something.
Yeah.
Like today, I was like, oh, yesterday I was hot. I was like, I don't need to
I went to the UNC
Walk outside.
basketball.
Like, oh no, it's surprise.
Yeah, so far.
Good.
Well, it was half empty, so, you know,
I knew you were going to football. I didn't know you
yeah.
Oh, my goodness. And got the first shot, and they'll get the second shot, another. Much more like fully, because they're 9 and 11.
Yeah.
I don't have babies,
Yeah.
toddlers to worry about. Oh, technology, that 11. It's just like cars. No time.
No, that's through your.
So our hours at school.
Yeah.
In the next 5
I've
years.
been,
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Sorry, y'all. We just want to make sure you're awake here on Friday afternoon.
Some really
That
nice
won't happen
speakers
again.
y'all have in
It's
here.
okay. Do you mind maybe testing it for us?
The call's live, is it?
Okay. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Can folks online hear me? If you can hear me, Will, can you give me a thumbs up that you can hear me? Okay, good. Will can hear me. People here can hear us. Thank you for your patience. We apologize. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Warren Miller. I'm going to turn it over to Ellen and Daniel.
Okay, I apologize for the delay. I guess this is a new thing for all of us to try to host an in-person virtual meeting like this. So welcome everyone, Ellen Beckman, Durham County Transportation Manager. Thanks for coming to the first workshop, either here or virtually. Everyone knows the purpose of this workshop is to make sure that our transit plans are successful. The transit plans are what we do, but this is more talking about how we do it and how we work together, communicate with the public, and what kind of accountability and oversight looks like moving forward. So I appreciate everyone being here and participating in this. You know, as elected officials, you have a critical role in that. This is the workshop to set the priorities for what we do, and then staff are here participating virtually or here. We'll figure out how we do that, and there'll be feedback later on to confirm that we are following along the direction that you all set. So, you know, in the end, this governance study will lead to a interlocal implementation agreement in each county that's approved by the 3 boards that approve the plan. So the county commissioners, the MPO board, the Go Triangle board. That's the end goal of this, as well as then staff are going to be developing policies and procedures that ensure that the agreement is followed through moving forward. So with that, you know, I just want to state at the beginning that while, of course, Durham and Orange County have had a significant setback with the light rail project, this really is an opportunity to set a new course moving forward and make sure that we're successful. You know, we do have a lot to be proud of too. You know, Durham and Orange counties have some of the highest transit ridership systems in the state, very high transit ridership for counties of our size. And that, you know, in my discussions and conversations with the public over the past year in my role, the one thing that's been consistent is how important transit is to our community and how everybody really wants and expects us to be successful. So with that, you know, I appreciate everyone taking the time and providing us guidance on how we achieve that.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Bennett. I'm the Director of Planning Inspections for Orange County. I would also like to welcome the group that's here and the group that's online. As Ellen said, this is an example of the continuing partnership we have with Durham County and Durham City and our local governments within Orange County. This common interest is what brought us to both updating our comprehensive transportation plans. And we realize that there's an important element is how we implement that each year. So that interlocal implementation agreement is kind of the core goals of this governance study. And we want to make sure, because that original implementation agreement was signed, back in 2011 and 2012. So it's time to take a look at that, 10 years later, to make sure what we're doing right and what we could do better. So again, welcome everybody, and we hope to make this as interactive as possible as we move forward. And we do understand the importance and the financial commitment with transit in both our counties, and being the western edge of the triangle. We also want to bring Wake County into the discussion and what they're doing too, because this is definitely a regional effort. So that's about it from the welcome, and we'll be turning this over primarily to Atkins and Warren Miller and Fountain Works to guide us through today's discussion and agenda. And there'll be a lot of Q&A as we move forward. Thank you again.
Afternoon again, everybody. Thank you. I'll keep it short. Thank you for participating with us today. My name is Adam Howe. I do work for a company called Atkins. Some of you may be familiar with me from my experiences working at Campo and managing and administering the TPAC and referendum processes over there when they started out. I have worked today with Warren Miller and Fountain Works. They're going to be facilitating today. My role is to listen and understand everything that you all are saying collectively, as well as individual audiences from each of your jurisdictions. One of my colleagues, James Parko, is in the back. We'll be both taking lots of notes, because what this will do today is take your feedback paired with the interviews that we had last month and turn it into action through what Ellen said, with some implementation agreement alternatives and creating a comprehensive set of policies and procedures to support action on the ground to help move transit investment forward in your communities. With that, Warren Miller is going to facilitate the rest of today. And if you have any other questions, please let us know during the process. This is supposed to be interactive. There is some snacks in the back for those attending in person, and some caffeine as well in case you are interested. But thank you again for being here, and we'll talk.
Hi, everyone. Warren Miller with Fountain Works. And again, really apologize for the technical issues we had on our end at the beginning. So we know it's Friday afternoon and getting started late is not ideal, but I think we've got everything squared away, and we want to go ahead and get into it. I'm going to be sharing my screen here. And Maddie, are you sharing the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we can go ahead and zoom in just on our outcomes here. We've got a couple things that we're trying to do, and it's really make sure we understand collectively as elected officials what your goals are with this agreement, understand what you think is working and what are some potential opportunities, and then just get some feedback so that we can come out of today and really understand what might be some options that can be put forth the next time that we get together. So if we just scroll over and we look at the agenda. And so the agenda here is we're going to get you grounded in a little bit of basics about where you've been and about the basics of the agreement, tell you a little bit more about what we've heard. And we're going to do a set of polling questions to just gauge. I mean, it's really just doing some pulse check and use that as a basis for some conversations that we want to have. And then we're going to be getting a better sense of what you see as the key issues we need to be working on when we come back together. So just some things about working in a hybrid format. Number one, the elected official, we're gonna have everybody introduce themselves, but the elected officials, folks that are part of the governing boards, would really love for you to have your cameras on. That would be great. That way we know you're with us and we can see you, and that would be really helpful. So we'd also love to have you make sure that you put your name and the organization that you're with, so that we, again, there's just everyone is clear about who's talking. We're going to have the elected officials be the primary participants. So we also have staff, and staff's going to have some opportunities as we go through this to give some feedback. But you all here in the room, elected officials, governing board, and the folks that are joining online are going to be the primary participants where we want to have the conversation with you. If folks online want to provide a comment, just go ahead and type Q in the chat. That way we know we can call on you. That'll be the way that we'll work. And we're going to be taking notes on a virtual whiteboard here. And we do ask that as we capture the key points of the conversation, we want you to own the whiteboard. So we want to make sure we get the essence of what you're saying up there. So we just ask you to own it. Just, do we get that right? As Adam said, we're going to be taking some detailed notes in the background. So we're not going to capture verbatim up here. But do make sure that we are getting the key points that you think are important. The meeting is being live streamed, so we just want to make sure everybody knows that it's being recorded. So the folks that are watching aren't, they're able to listen in, but they're not able to participate. But we will have this accessible for everyone. Love to do some introductions. I'm going to start with the folks that are in the room. And for the folks that are in the room, we need to make sure that you actually speak into the microphone. And it should be green. And so I've got another microphone up here. So we'll just ask if you could just introduce yourselves. And as you're introducing yourself, just if there's something that you hope to make sure you get out of today's conversation, what you're hoping for, we'd love to hear that as well. I'll start with you since you were here first.
Lucky me. Hi, Michael Parker. I'm with the Chapel Hill Town Council and also serve on the Go Triangle and MPO boards.
And I'm Jen Weaver, and I am the mayor of Hillsborough and the current vice chair of the Chapel Hill Carborough Durham MPO.
What are you hoping to get out of today?
Oh, today I think I'm just hoping to get a good handle on what we have to learn from this governance study, and to be sure we're kind of all headed what direction we're headed, and hopefully headed there together, at least understanding each other.
Thanks.
Javier Caballero, Durham City Council, MPO alternate for the council. And yeah.
I'm Charlie Reese. I'm a member of the Durham City Council. I'm on the MPO board, and I'm also on the Go Triangle board. I'm not sure what I'm looking to get out of today.
Okay.
That's an honest answer. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate your candor.
I'm James Zetta Bedford. I'm vice chair of the Orange County Board of County Commissioners. Also serve on the MPO board. I am subbing in for Commissioner Sally Green, who had a very important engagement, and I'm hoping to learn what the issues are so that the issues drive the ILA and not in reverse.
Welcome. We'll come to the folks that are online. Brenda Howerton, could you go next?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Brenda Howerton, chair of the Board of County Commissioners in Durham, and I'm also the vice chair of the Go Triangle board. And I guess today I'd like to get a good idea of what's coming out of the governor's governing report.
Thanks, Brenda. We're just working our technical controls here. We'll come over to Will. Go ahead, Will.
Afternoon, everybody. Will Allen, appointed by the Raleigh City Council to the Go Triangle Board. Also serve on the Campo Executive Board, and I was a member of the original Wake Transit Plan committee, that the advisory committee that helped to put together the plan.
Okay, do we have any, are there any other electeds or governing board members that are on the, I think we've got everybody. Great. Okay, so, and we also have the names of the other staff members that are here, and, staff folks, thanks again for being here. We are going to make sure that we've got some opportunities to engage you in this conversation. So as we go through this, we will would love to be calling on you for input. So thank you. And what we'll do is we'll just start by showing just a quick recap of just our timeline, where we've been. And we could go ahead and we can zoom in a little bit on this. So if we look at the very beginning, this gets started in 1989 with the enabling legislation. That gives Go Triangle, that enabled it to exist, gives it its power, its authority, and it's made possible by the 3 counties of the Triangle. And so this was This was begun in 1989. Another milestone in our timeline here is 2011, 2012. That's when the half-cent sales tax is approved. And then in 2013, we have the ILA agreements that were guiding that investment. We go forward in 2016, we have the triangle tax districts that were established. So that's the final expansion of the special tax districts that were defined and codified. That was an agreement between the Triangle and Durham, Orange, Wake counties, as well as Campo, DCHC MPO, and Burlington Graham MPO. And then in 2019, the light rail project is discontinued. That project was voted to be discontinued. And then as we get into 2020 and 2021, work begins on the new transit plans, the new ILA, the new implementation agreements. So we wanted to just go ahead and give you just a quick flyover of some of the key milestones that just led us. Why are we here? Why are we having this session in the first place? And that, if we can just back up a little bit. And I wanted to open up for folks in the room or folks that are on the call, just when you think about where you've been, particularly over the last 10 years, anything that just jumps out at you when you look at these major milestones? Anything that you think is important? Anything that you want to reflect on?
Yeah, one thing, and that's how much of even the conversations we will have here or the work that will be done is really circumscribed by the state legislature and the enabling legislation. And I think that creates challenges in terms of getting the governance really right at all levels.
Will, did you want to jump in? Any other reactions when you look at this timeline? Anything that jumps out at you? You want to make sure you get grounded on where you've been, what's led you to this.
I'd just like to comment. This is Will online. In regard to what Michael just said, I agree that there are challenges, a number of them. But in terms of ILAs, I can't help but think about the last 5 years that we've experienced with the ILAs that we put together for the Wake Transit Plan, which are animated by TPAC, the Transit Planning Advisory Committee, that I have to live by them. And it's been very effective. In other words, I was reflecting on what Michael said, and I've been among the first to agree with him on a lot of matters related to our enabling legislation, but it really hasn't limited what we've been able to do effectively and with the Wake Transit Plan. And we had no idea. We had our reservations too. So I'm just saying it can be done. I think it's being done effectively, certainly bureaucratically, but there are limits that are built into those ILAs that have worked very effectively. Within that framework, I guess I'd like to say up front that I don't know to what extent anyone's taken a hard look at the ILAs in Wake County for the Wake Transit Plan, but I hope that you have, and that you'll do a comparative analysis to the needs that we have and the things that have made those effective as we work towards those for Wake and for Durham and Orange County.
Thanks, Will. All right. If we look, so we'll move to the implementation agreement, and just to give you an overview, maybe a show of hands here in the room. How familiar are folks with this, with the components? You're pretty familiar. Not very familiar. Okay, Charlie. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. I recognize some of these boxes. I understand what the words mean.
Yeah. Just getting a sense. Well, that's why you have staff too, right? That's That's why you have staff. Familiarity, just getting a sense in the room, how familiar are you? Okay. If we look at these big buckets here in the ILA, and we just to get ourselves oriented, you have the incorporation of the county bus and rail investment plans. So that section, that's the plans from the counties guide the implementation agreement. So that's one piece. So the financial plan definition, what that means is Go Triangle develops a recommended financial plan that guides the funding distribution, capital and operating, and that plan must be approved by each county board. So that's what the financial plan definition. There's a bucket on financial and performance reporting, and that sets expectations for reporting by Go Triangle and the transit service operators. There's the non-supplementation clause, and that's just a kind of a way of saying new money can only be used to support new services.
Can I ask a couple of questions here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Charlie Reese, are we talking about a generic implementation agreement or a specific implementation agreement?
What, like of all these relate, these are the basic elements of what's in the implementation. So it's really, think of it more as the elements, not the specifics for this implementation. So just getting you oriented to the things that are in this agreement that you have the opportunity to modify. And
this is what's in the current.
Right, yeah.
2013 version.
Okay, and who are I apologize, who are the parties to the implementation agreement?
Yeah, so the parties to the implementation agreement would be each, so it would be, you want to jump into that? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Now let's get you a microphone. Yeah. But it would be, well, we'll let Adam go ahead.
The parties would be in each county, so it would be the respective county organization, plus the DCHC MPO and Go Triangle. So those are the three parties to each county's implementation agreement, and they have separate ones, but they were tied together through the light rail project.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was my question. Like, this is the format for both implementation agreements, the Orange County and the Durham County, one, right? And
Sorry, Mr. Reese, go ahead.
And for both, Go Triangle develops a recommended financial plan that guides funding distribution for each of the counties. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and this is really what we want to do, is just kind of get ourselves grounded here.
And in 2013, I was not on the city council, certainly not on the MPO board. So this is the first time I'm interacting with this information. That's good to know. Thank you. That's why I was asking. Appreciate it.
They develop the annual financial plan. They don't develop the 4-year or the 5-year the transit plan financial plan. They cooperate, but they do recommend the annual funding plan.
And
The annual funding plan isn't guided by
Guided by.
I believe that they're asked to do that by the individual counties.
Yeah.
As a matter of routine.
Ours is usually on consent agenda.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said, last year and the year before, it was on consent agenda since the light rail had been canceled and we were developing a new transit plan.
the consent agenda of what entity?
Orange County Commissioners.
Okay.
Yep, yeah.
That would explain why I haven't seen it before. Awesome.
Seen that, I think.
Durham County should have had one also.
Not on the
don't
city
sit on the
council.
county.
agenda.
See it, the councils don't see it.
Right, so that's our point.
That's
Our
the
point is
point.
that we are operating with less knowledge than others because so Jen's a town council, we're city council. The transit plans, unless Orange does theirs fundamentally differently, we don't see a lot of this stuff unless we see it like adjacently, that we sit on Go Triangle or MPO, but it's very adjacent, it's very outside of the process. And I would say that is quite frankly a pain point and a major one.
Yeah, let's get that on the
It has
whiteboard.
been brought,
And just to give
It
you,
has been brought to the MPO, it has been brought to the MPO board and the county board for information ahead of Go Triangle board's approval of it.
in several past years.
So Ellen, this is Brenda. So is that, I was trying to listen to Charlie's question as to how it gets created. Could you go over that again, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Ellen.
Well, the staff working group, which is one of the boxes here, is noted in the interlocal implementation agreement. It's established and it has 3 votes on the staff side that recommend a financial plan each year. And that then goes to the Go Triangle Board for approval. And like I said, it goes.
All 3 boards for
the
financial plan has to be approved by the county commissioners, the MPO, and Go Triangle.
The transit plan as a whole goes to all 3, but the annual budget has not, is not required to be approved by the Board of Commissioners or the MPO board.
Sure about that?
I mean, it's different.
I don't know. Yeah, in Wake County, it goes to the Campo board for approval and the Go Triangle board for approval. On the Durham and Orange side, it only is required to be approved by the Go Triangle board.
So maybe someone could help me understand the difference between the annual financial plan that guides the funding distribution and the county transit plan. That would be great.
Go ahead.
The county transit plan is the long range plan, right? We're working on that now. It's through 2040. So it says what we will spend money on through 2040. As you can imagine, it's not extremely detailed of what's going to happen in 2040, right? A lot of it's more the big picture priorities, like commuter rail, light rail, bus service improvements, kind of bigger picture priorities for how we should spend the money over the 20 years. The financial plan is more like the annual budget, right? That says, okay, we're going to spend $500,000 next year on improving bus stops, right? That's much more specific. And which agency, receives those funds and is responsible for those projects. Does that help?
That helps a lot. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Ellen.
And again, Sandra, thank you. So Sandra Freeman, just the improved budget and financial reflects what is recommended in the work.
And the work plan is approved by all 3, right? No?
Go ahead.
We're kind of using the same, a lot of different terms for the same thing. Like we call it the work plan, and it's the same thing as the annual budget, really. I guess in the ILA, we call it the financial plan, but we're all talking about the same thing.
I'm just noting in the chat that Aaron Kane said the annual work plan has been brought to the Durham City Council for comment each of the last 2 years. And Sandra Freeman, our CFO at Go Triangle, says the approved budget financial plan reflects what is recommended in the work plan for that fiscal year.
Questions just as we go through these pieces. So there's the process to make recommendations and amendments to each county plan. So Go Triangle takes this to the staff working group. That's a tricameral process. There is the creation of the staff working group. So it sets up that creation of the staff working group as well. Any other questions? Again, we're just trying to make sure we've got some of the basic elements that are in this implementation plan. Any questions that you have right now? Okay. So the whole idea of this implementation plan is that it's a tool to help you collaborate, help you get the kind of impact that you want to have on transit and the people that you serve. And And that really gets to, that gets to the conversations that we had with all of you. And I guess, question I'd like to be able to, before we sort of jump into what we heard, but, as elected officials, are there things that you're proud of right now in terms of, accomplishments that transit's had in your communities? Things when people ask you, is transit a good thing? Is transit helping us? What do you say? What are some of the things that you brag about, things that you're proud of? What do you say? Yeah, anyone? Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I mean, Chapel Hill Transit does an incredible job getting employees, students to UNC. And we recently in Northern Orange, we've just had this one little circulator bus, but we added for demand using electric vans, and that's a pilot program. So, I mean, people are willing to use it. We need more of it.
What else do you brag about? What else are you proud of? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, for the last 20 years, Chapel Hill Transit has been fare-free, and up until 2 years ago, we were the largest fare-free system in the entire country.
I'll jump in. In Hillsborough, we're a little bit different because we really depend on the county for any, bus transit that we have, and we're grateful for it. But we're really excited about our train station that's coming. That's, was part of that transit tax agreement, and expect that that's going to be a transformative development around that train station. So, and our community is really excited and ready and waiting for it.
When is that coming?
It has to be built within the next 5 years. Yeah.
Charlie,
I'm proud that we're fare free at least until next spring, and we'll see what decisions we can make after that.
Yeah, I mean, Durham bus service is fare free until at least July of next year. And staff is working on figuring out how to pay for that going forward. I'm really proud that within the last year or so, we've started implementing plans for service expansion along some of our busiest corridors, moving to 30-minute service and service later at night. The operator shortages have made that even more challenging right now. But the other thing I'm proud of is that we were able to maintain pretty solid level of service throughout the pandemic when other systems around the country saw deep drops in ridership during the COVID pandemic. Our system did not see those deep drops, and our operators really kept up that kind of transportation lifeline for our residents. So that's been great, but obviously we've got a ton of challenges coming out of the pandemic to make sure that our system is funded the right way and that we continue to expand a service and make it more frequent for folks who use it.
Thank you. Will or Brenda, anything you want to add to this conversation?
No, I think Charlie is more in touch with the bus service in Durham than I am on the county side. So I think he captured what needed to be captured.
Okay. Will, anything on your end?
No, I think it's been covered well. I agree with what everyone has said. I'm proud of those things as well.
Good. So we asked, maybe we'll go to the vision. We asked, what's the kind of impact that when you think about where you want to go with transit, we asked you that question. What's your vision? In other words, what's the impact that you want to have? These three themes on the left, not in order, but you said you want everyone who needs it or wants transit has access to it. You said, we want transit to help encourage local economic development. That it's a way to achieve more environmental sustainability. So these are some things, the kind of impact that you want to have. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you putting the effort? Why are you here on Friday afternoon having this conversation? And when you talk about your vision for what does it look like when you're working together as a collaborative, that you're spending public money efficiently, effectively, that you're collaborating, you're talking to each other across counties, across agencies, you've got stakeholders involved, you've got the community involved, that you're able to have both local and regional transit visions. You're able to accomplish both of those things. So these are some of the things that you said were important. And I wanted to just check this, you know, what did we miss something in some of these previous conversations, or something you want to add to this or modify? I really want to open it up. Yeah, go ahead.
I know we're talking about transit, but also with the MPO, I mean, we've just really pushed for a vision where we also are talking about pedestrian and bicycling and interconnected it regionally to have those additional ways for people to get from place to place that is also environmentally friendly and open.
Different modes, pedestrian,
Different modes,
bike,
right.
connected regionally. Hey, Maddie, I want to make sure we can get that. Just, yeah, just saying that it's important also this vision of having bikes, connecting bikes, pedestrians across the region. Again, just want to check this. Is there something does this resonate with you? Sometimes I need a signal, like some sort of visual thumb.
I mean, I think, oh, I'm sorry, Jane, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it definitely resonates. I think that one thing that I would add that when I pinch hit for the regular representative to the group in Orange County, the name I forget, you know, that Mark Bell has come to.
Policy committee.
The policy committee, yes. That we had explicit conversations about equity, and that we would ideally have a transit plan that advanced racial equity in our community, in terms of, yes, everyone who needs or wants it has access to it, but that it's also, you know, helping people be mobile to access jobs and, you know, making living more affordable, those kinds of things.
I think ensuring that there's affordable housing, especially on, I can speak closer to the mic, within the rail corridor. And it looks good so far, but just that's going to be a critical piece of the success, I think.
So, you know, I mean, how transit helps support affordable, how these things work together.
It's in some sense integrating transit with land use so that you're thinking about it holistically. I think the other thing that I think about, given that, you know, money has to be found to pay for transit, which requires ongoing political support, is under making sure that transit benefits everyone, not just those who actually use it. And I think
benefits everyone, not just those who use it.
Yeah.
And personally, our statement about everyone who needs or wants transit has access to it, I think we want more than that. We want more people to want to use it.
If any of these are, yeah, just really, again, what's that impact that you want to have? Why are you doing this? So more people want to use transit. So we're gonna like to actually move over, and we also asked the question of, well, if you have a great implementation agreement, you have an implementation agreement that works really well, what does that look like? What are the goals that you want to achieve? So this is the document. This is the ILAs we talked about, the implementation plan. You said these 5 things as we had these conversations. They're up on the screen here. Our goal is that it's representative. So these are pretty high level. These are big kind of high level elements here. It's representative. That means that you're involving all the appropriate stakeholders, and that their roles, their functions, everything is clear. It's laid out with respect to the implementation. So it's representative, and you've got clear roles. That this plan supports collaborative work, that it's accessible. So information is accessible by all the stakeholders, that it's equitable. So equitable in this context means equitable in terms of voting, equitable in terms of the service provided, in terms of community representation, and there's transparency. So an open and clear process for the implementation plan.
I'd add one thing to that.
Please, yeah.
I think what we need to do a better job of is having checks and balances so that we don't suffer from collective groupthink.
Checks and balances. Yeah, so that really is kind of almost maybe another sort of sixth element here.
Yeah, that's what I meant it to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
So
I mean,
a
one of the
better-
lessons I learned personally that I took away from, the whole thing with light rail is there were too many people invested in it and not enough people asking tough questions.
Again, just want to open this up. Thank you for that. Anything that you would add or anything that you bring up when you think about your big high level goals for an implementation plan?
Not at all. You're good. Can you talk a little bit more about the equitable goal?
Yeah.
What's being expressed there?
So equitable in terms of how the voting process works. So that would be how decisions are made. Equitable in terms of how service is provided.
Can you give me an example of a way that it's a goal to make voting more equitable within the decision-making group? That's the part I don't really understand. Also, you've got the phrase fair and equal in there, which it's just not what I think of when I think of the word equitable. But are you talking about geographic weighting in voting? Are you talking about giving more emphasis to voices from the community, from unserved areas? What does equitable mean in this context? What I'm trying to understand.
Well, and so then I am going to push back. Let me just say, what does it mean when you think about equitable?
I didn't use the term. It's on your slide. I'm asking you to explain why you're using it. That's why.
Adam, go ahead.
I don't want you to challenge me. I want you to explain what it means in the slide. That's what I'm asking.
So, Mr. Reese, what we heard from a lot of your colleagues in the interviews that we conducted the last couple of months is that there was a desire on multiple levels to have equitable inclusion of different groups and audiences for multiple purposes. So one of them is voting, as Warren pointed out. At the staff working group level, currently there's only 3 staff member votes applicable for that, 1 from each governing board that has oversight. And so that, in terms of some people's perspective, is a very limited focus. And so talking about equitable votes perspectives to come in and provide more perspective, to have a greater conversation. Other aspects to talk about equity is more community inclusion in any level of the process, whether it's engagement protocols and processes developed to further enhance how that is designed, because there's some gaps noticed there by some of your colleagues and staff. And it was generalized to be so broad because there were so many gaps that we defined it as that level.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's good to know.
Charlie, would you add anything to that?
I would add that the word equal in the description belies the word equitable in this context, in my opinion. What he said makes all the sense in the world to me. And that's what I was asking from you. So I appreciate the answer. That's fantastic.
I have a follow-up to that, though. So is this, I guess, what's the purpose of this document? Is it, and because that equitable and the fair and equal, you're gonna, like, if it's an outward-facing document, I think at least in Durham, the way people are gonna interpret that over and over again is exactly how Charlie's interpreting it. And so if it's for an internal group like this, where we understand the kind of background and context, that's great. But if it's a more of an outward facing document, I think you're going to continuously get questions about how that's framed.
Yeah, so it needs to be really clear.
Very.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, and Will, I realize also when I move my head away from the microphone that the sound quality is not great for folks online. So I'll try to keep that in mind. So apologies for that.
I'm sorry, what? We could hear you fine. Thank you.
Right. So again, this is what you said in terms of big goals. We asked you what's working right now with the implementation plan. So we've got, Maddie, we'll just move over and share some of those elements. So we'll just zoom in a little bit.
Before you leave that chart, go back to, just for a second, please.
Yeah.
Accessible. Talk a little bit about that.
So Ms. Howerton, I'll jump in here and help to convey more. Again, what's up? Is this better? Fantastic. That's a little loud. The point of defining accessible is, again, on multiple levels, just as I tried to convey with equitable, and it's defining how information is conveyed to multiple audiences, whether it's the public or you as elected officials, or even internally with staff and management, and making it as accessible as possible, not just for information that comes to you on board purposes, but also performance tracking for different metrics, whether it's financial or service provisions, and how to make that streamlined and effective and efficient as possible with your existing resources at the same time.
Brenda, do you want to add to that or clarify?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking how often accessible, sometimes information may be accessible to the elected officials, but it's not accessible to the community.
I missed that last part.
Last part again, Brenda, accessible to the community. I didn't.
It can be accessible to the elected officials and not accessible to the community.
It can or should be.
Should be accessible to the community.
Yes.
What you're saying, I think.
Yeah.
Should you add then, and the community?
Yeah.
I think something that this conversation is pointing out, and I don't know if it fits under accessible or something else, but there's I think there's a need for clarity. Yeah. We've just heard that there's a bunch of terms we don't understand. There are questions about, so I think it needs to be crystal clear, that what is meant is what is expressed.
And something for everybody on the call today is what we've learned as a team on the backside of all this is listening to your interviews and conversations and reviewing some peer regions and jurisdictions, is that what is missing currently from the guiding agreement documentation is that there are upfront goals defined that kind of define the overarching tone of how everybody will work together to implement what the goal is to be done. And so that was the intent of proposing these, to then define how we create actionable items in further documentation.
And so that gets to your point, Will, and looking at some other models, including Wake, is an example of one that has that.
I did want to say, just so it's not left out, that when some of the folks from Orange County were interviewed with Equitable, we were also including geographic equity and did include the weighted vote. So it was much broader than what's stated there. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll capture that. So geographic equity, we'll add that as well. So Matt, if we could go ahead and we'll move to what you said is working well with the current agreement. You said there is support for so you are collaborating across regions, counties, and agencies, that there is acceptable representation from local communities. Some of the themes that daily operation functions well. There's an interest and a need, a desire to improve transit service across both counties. So the existing implementation plan is not process heavy, but at the same time, there might be an opportunity that maybe not as much as it could be. So tightening some things up, and that's just, that's some of the questions that we're going to want to get into. That accessibility and sustainability are at the core of express principles. Adam, maybe say a little bit more about that last bullet.
So it was expressed by many folks on our interviews and individual audiences was that at least it was a desired goal to make services accessible and environmentally sustainable.
You were talking about the services, not the governance process.
Correct.
So then if we flip over and we said, well, what are some opportunities, perceived potentials, where can you get better? What are some perceived opportunities? You said one would be this connection to the greater Triangle Wake County. There's an opportunity, if managed correctly, ridership could increase across all operations. There's an opportunity for more representation by stakeholders and community leaders. An opportunity around equity can be a shared vision regionally, as well as having local goals around that. And there's an opportunity for more clarity on funding allocations and processes. So think of these as, opportunities to, explore in the next round, the next iteration of this. So just see if there's any questions with these in terms of when we ask, what from your perception, what's working well. I would like to open it also up to staff at this point, if there's something else that you wanted to add to these themes. You can let me know if somebody jumps in. And want to open it up if anyone from the staff wants to add to this.
If we're talking, when you first put what is working well, I thought you were referring just to the governance of the ILA. But I think that if we're talking about, generally speaking, transit plans, what's working well and what's not, to me, the overriding problem that then in many ways trickles down to everything else is there just isn't enough money, number one. We just don't have enough money in the system to do the things that we need to do to create create good transit locally and regionally, number one. And then number two, I think that the nature of the funding mechanism being driven, sort of at the county level, creates an inevitable and unfortunate tension between local and regional needs. That because there is a single pot of money in each county, rather than a county pot and a regional pot, there is, and until that changes, there always will be a tension, which can be helpful at times, but other times is problematic, between arbitrating between local needs and regional needs.
It's a tension point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Will. I agree completely with what Michael just said, and I'm sure that we all realize that this was intentional, I believe, in the enabling legislation, because I believe it was thought that it had to be not intentional in the sense of making things fragmented and keeping up walls. But the way that financing in North Carolina has worked, it certainly worked against us in the ways that Michael just described so well. I hope in the future that we can find a way to overcome that through some kind of regional, as Michael said, funding mechanism. It would certainly work better. And while I'm speaking, I'd like to ask about that top bullet under perceived potential. I'm not certain I understand that. More connections to the greater Triangle Wake County boundaries may or may not be an issue. Probably something simple. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Mr. Allen, one of the, well, not one, but many of the comments that we received during the interview process and during some research was that there was just a desire to see how there could be the balance between regional and local service provision. And I understand that that is always a challenge, and it's constantly growing and ebbing and flowing with bus versus how the rail and other investments go. But that did come up time and time again between different audiences.
Would this be, for instance, as a concrete example, how the cost sharing might work for big capital projects such as commuter rail?
Yes, and so a lot of these, again, I recognize are written very broadly, but they're designed to be that way to allow us to be flexible with how we look at developing options based on our conversations together. So it could have financial aspects, it could have collaboration policies or protocols that we define for you. It could even have codified collaboration points and how things get reported out. So all different factors taken into account, but it's written broadly to reflect all of them together.
Thank you, Adam.
This is Wendy, and I'm sorry I'm joining late from another meeting, and I don't know if this has already been said or brought up, but related to this is we don't really have a regional transit plan that really does completely link together Orange, Durham, and Wake counties. So I didn't know if that had come up.
Thanks, Wendy.
No, chiming in again, Will, I agree with her. I think that ties into a lot of what Michael and I were just saying about funding. We're hamstrung in a bit by that enabling legislation, which Michael brought up to begin with, simply because of those that need to keep these pots of money separate and for each county to produce its own transit plan and then to say how they want to fund it. So it works against us having a regional plan, but we need to have one. We need to have both a regional plan, a better regional plan, and then a way to fund it and to make it real.
Thanks, Will.
This is Brenda. This is Brenda from Durham. One of the biggest questions that I consistently get in the community has to do with the clarity around funding. That is those questions pop up every time we have a conversation about transit. It's where's the money? How is it being allocated? So I think there just need to be some more clarity around the funding.
We're going to call that an opportunity.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just curious as the acceptable representation from local communities and what is working well, what was meant by that comment?
Well, Adam, you go ahead and I'll jump in.
Yeah, so it's a great question. Thank you for pointing that one out. It was a comment more geared towards the Orange County side in terms of who is coming to the table and whatnot. So we heard that as a point, that was what was working well. In terms of context, it was broadly explained. We do know that the staff working group, it is limited, but the staff working group technically has an open door policy, even though there is no official vote counted for community members to be at that table.
Okay, I guess for me, I would say we certainly need to do more on the Durham side around that. I would not consider, I think that there is intention and there's improvement, but especially with the failure of the light rail, I think there was a lot of disappointment and not a lot of clarity on spending, clarity on plans. I think that's why you're seeing a lot of hesitation around the commuter rail specifically. And it's because of not having enough representation or communication or conversation, however you want to frame it. Specifically, since in Durham, we know who the transit riders are, and those are often folks who are left out all the time.
Okay. Yeah, and one of the things we're going to do a little bit later this afternoon is really go into these more specifically and say, you know, for some of these specific points, is the current plan okay, status quo, there need to be more in terms of more stakeholder involvement, really just kind of get a little more specific on some of these points, but thanks for reaching out on that. Again, when you step back, you look, there are some things working well that are functional with this plan. There are some areas where you need some more clarity. Maybe you want to change some things or some opportunities. We'll call them potential here. But this again is what we heard from you all. And I did want to open it up, staff who is on this, I'd love to hear, and that includes you, Ellen and Craig, if there is anything else that you would want to add to what's working well, what the perceived potential opportunities, anything else? You don't have to, but we're.
I'll turn it over to the online participants first.
Sure. Anybody, Maddie, that's, Sandra, go ahead. All right, Sandra, you can unmute yourself if you want to just jump in.
All right, wasn't sure if I needed to chat or mute or chatter or talk. I would say from our perspective, I don't want to call us the glue, Go Triangle, but we do sit in the middle. So we interact with Wake, Durham, and Orange. And for us, one thing that we'd like to see is where we can to have some consistency in how things are administered across the agencies. From a finance perspective, when we have 3 different counties, we're managing their funds, and they provide us with 3 different ways of doing the same process. It sometimes causes us perhaps to have more issues with getting more staff with the process, that if we could make it a little bit more regional, that would help with that. I think reporting is another one. I've heard comments about concerns about more visibility on reporting. We do a lot of reporting on numbers and how things are spent. And maybe what is working in one county is not working as well in another. And I think from my perspective, I'd like for us to look at some consistency in how the information is relayed back to our citizens and our public, so that they can look at it across the 3 counties and get a real understanding of how the money is being spent. The data is there, and we try to be transparent, but we obviously could do a better job of getting that information out. And so for us, it's about, from a Go Triangle perspective, any consistency in processes, procedures, reporting, those types of things, I think would help us make it more productive and allow us to do more with less folk, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Sandra. Sean, go ahead with your comment.
Thanks. This is Sean Egan from the city of Durham. Just sharing that it's really important for there to be a role for the transit providers in the region. On the Western Triangle, we have Go Durham, Chapel Hill Transit, and Orange Public Transit. And all of these entities are responsible for delivering the services and in many cases, the related infrastructure to improve transit in our communities. And yet none of these 3 transit providers have a formal role in the process or their governing boards. And so that's something that there is a real opportunity for improvement.
Thanks, Sean. We'll come over to Brian. Brian Litchfield.
So I'll just, thank you, Brian Litchfield, Chapel Hill Transit. And I'll just echo, part of my comment is I'll echo what Sean just said, and said it well. I think we've been saying that for some time. The transit providers that provide the bulk of the service, while we're involved in the staff working groups, we don't necessarily have a vote at the staff working group and don't have much beyond that. So certainly having a stronger voice in that and supporting the communities we serve is important. Also note too, again, I don't know about the Durham ILA, but the Orange ILA does have information in there that talks about how some funding is allocated between folks, between parties to the agreement. And I think while we're open to conversations about that, what that split is and how that works, certainly, I think there needs to be recognition that there are transit plans and services that are funded with those kind of current things in place. And we just need to be, as we think about what we do different and new in the future, we need to be cognizant to make sure that we don't inadvertently undo something that we've already funded or have impacts on something that could already be funded or moving ahead as a result of that.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. This is Commissioner Bedford again. Another thing we want to explore as potential would be whether right now Orange County pays over $1 million to Go Triangle to do management, for the task district and the transit plan. And instead, if it's a possibility to just pass that money back to the county, and if we could do it cheaper, and have a less of a, one less layer of bureaucracy in some areas at least, and explore that. I hope nobody fell off their chair.
We've got a new, we want to welcome a new participant here. Just want to say hello to everybody who's online.
Wendy Jacobs.
Hey, Wendy.
I was in the car before, oh, sorry.
Unmute yourself.
Yes, Wendy Jacobs. I was in the car before, but now I'm actually here.
Great, thanks, Wendy. Thanks for being here. All right, Ellen, Craig, anything else you wanted to add? Go ahead, Ellen.
I'll have a true staff statement here, that we could be a lot more efficient, I think, and effective if we had more structure around how we make decisions. Like, we just don't have many policies right now on the Durham and Orange side that are guiding this on the staff level. We have good communication. We have tons of meetings where we talk about this stuff all the time, but it would, I think, help us be more effective staff if we had some clear guidance and consistency in how we implement this process.
Thanks, Ellen.
I do. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think it's really important to say under what is working well is, at least at the group I was part of, is that across jurisdictions, across the different staffing levels, we felt they were extremely competent and good communicators, and we rely upon them as elected officials.
Very nice. I want to do a pulse check here, Matt. If we can go ahead and we'll just jump over to the next thing. So this isn't a vote or anything. This is just kind of a temperature check. How well do you think the current implementation agreement is meeting the goals, and what matters to you when you think about how well this current implementation agreement is working? Just want to get a sense right here. We know as elected officials, maybe you don't know all the details, but just kind of getting a sense from where you sit right now, where would you put your dot here? So if you think the current implementation agreement is working really well, you'd put your dot all the way to the right. Not working well at all, over to the left. And if it's somewhere in between, maybe some mixed perception, then you can put in the middle. I'm gonna go ahead and tell us where you want to put your dot. We're just going to do it one at a time. We're just going to work our way around.
I'd put it sort of halfway between halfway and not working. Yeah, roughly
Like
there.
here?
Some close enough.
Okay. Yeah, and we're going to come back and just have you share a little bit more about why. But let's just go around. Where do you want us to put it?
I think I would go more towards the not working.
A little more towards the not working?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems like the right area. It's me somewhere in there. Sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with Javier and Charlie too.
And Wendy.
Yeah, for Brenda Howerton as well, not working as well.
I would say that, but I
Oh, Wendy, we need to get your
Yeah.
mic on.
Yeah, I would say it, but also within the context of we're not doing the light rail anymore. And I feel like the agreement that we have now is really very much focused on the light rail. And, because that's obviously not the major project anymore. That was the foundation for all of the relationships and everything. I would like to give it that context.
So it sounds like you want to put it near where many of these other dots are.
Yes, but again, I think the context is important. Why we need, one of the major reasons why it needs to be revised.
And Will, let me get where should we put your dot?
I agree completely with what Wendy just said. I wanted to put some context on it too. And I think that I'm not from Durham or Orange County, but having served on the board for 8 years, my perception is definitely that it seemed to work well before, but it's not working well now. It needs to be updated. revised.
Sorry, Will. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said updated or revised. Go ahead, Warren.
So looks like we've got some consistency here. Yeah, can you all just say a little bit more about why these dots, why you put your dots sort of over here on the left-hand side? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think two reasons. One, I think it's been mentioned already that certainly at the staff working group level, the representation, the representation effectively doesn't exist. Whether it's the transit operators or the municipalities or others, they don't have a vote, and I think that's been problematic. And the second thing I would mention is, as has been heard in this room, is that there's a whole bunch of elected officials who don't even know how it works. And if it's that opaque or that confusing, that is also to be a big problem.
Okay.
I think Wendy captured it. It's obsolete. It's just obsolete now that the light rail project's not happening.
I'm sorry, who said that? Oh,
Edward.
okay.
Sorry.
Sorry. Anyone else want to add just why you've got your dot over there, Charlie? Anything else you want to say? Right. Okay.
In addition to what I said before about this context, I'd have to say, comparing it to the last 5 years of experience in Wake County, I once in a while I hear an elected official grouse about one or another aspect of something, but as soon as it's explained to them, they understand, because our LAs are, well, necessarily probably more complex than they would be, say, in Durham, because we have 12 municipalities. But people seem satisfied with it, both at the county commission level and at the individual city council level. As I said on Campo as well, and so I'm privy to those conversations, both in the context of those meetings and privately, and especially sensitive to the Raleigh City Council, with whom I'm very close and who appointed me. And I think that people are very satisfied over here, which makes me think all of the feeling on that side means, where there's smoke, there's fire. We need to change this. I may not be expressing myself very clearly, but I think you get it. We have a system that seems to work, and people are confident in it, and it has a 5-year track record of working. And that doesn't seem to be the case in Durham and Orange.
Thanks, Will. All right, well, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a little break here. And what we're going to do is, so folks online, we'll take a few minutes, let folks here get up, get something to drink. What we're going to do when we come back is get into a little bit more about what you might want to change, what you might want to keep. So we're going to kind of run through some, kind of drill down a little bit more and just understand a little bit more about some of the issues you want to make sure you tackle. What this does is it's going to then help the staff, the consultants, bring back some options. So we'll take a break, we'll come back, we'll dive into some of the more specifics here. So with that, folks online, we're going to put you on mute, and folks here in the room, we've got some drinks and snacks. We'll take 10 minutes.
Wow, this is so fun to see everybody in person.
I know.
And it was so funny because I was looking at the screen and I did not recognize this room. I texted Javiera and you too, Mike. I was like, where are you guys? Like, you're supposedly in our building and I don't even recognize that room. Where is this?
This is your
Very
house.
nice. Very nice. Because this has been renovated over the past 2 years.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, like while we're not in this building. I mean, the renovation was supposed to happen, but, you know, so like, I'm actually gonna have my own office.
So the restaurants.
It was really, I don't know. But this is new. This is really
I've never been here, but I've
Yeah. This is really nice.
Oh, yeah. I didn't do that.
Are you able to stay? I cannot. No. Okay, all right.
There is, I need to go.
All right, absolutely, I'm sorry. I actually canceled a bunch of stuff this afternoon to be here, and then I have to go anyway, so sorry about that.
Okay. Well,
But okay,
thanks for being here.
absolutely, look forward to hearing about it.
Late.
No problem whatsoever. I was late too. Okay.
Thank you. Your questions did bring to mind that you almost have to start with the 2012 agreement. What does the implementation agreement say now? And what parts of that need to be changed? So that we're going to get to that point.
Yeah, no,
And I actually misspoke. Adam pointed out to me, because we don't use the term financial plan.
Right, that's
The
what I was
financial
trying to
plan
get
is
at.
Really includes and transit plan as a whole. It's just the like, so transit plan, financial plan, the same thing. Approved by all three boards, but then the annual budget.
Yeah, it should when I share.
I heard Aaron lecturing us. Oh, the city council sees the work plan. Right, and the idea that the work plan is the same as the financial plan is too.
I'm just. And then my bag is totally like.
The first time I've ever encountered the term financial plan.
We don't use that term.
Right,
But
so that's
the
why.
legislation does use that term.
Yeah.
But we don't use it.
The only thing that you'll see in your city budget is if you are getting money from the transit tax, when, you know, this is in amongst your other agenda. X amount of dollars.
It's great to see you. I
County on an annual basis, when we look at.
Can anyone get one of these?
Of course, yeah. Good to see you too. I have seen them.
That shows up.
Not recently. I haven't. Thank you.
All the money goes to all the different agencies. It's just what comes to your city or county or.
Thank you.
Chapel Hill. They have to put that in their budget.
Absolutely.
And we have the chance to make a change.
Okay. All right, let's say goodbye to these nice folks.
Bye, Charlie.
Gotta get back
Good luck.
underway.
Yeah, Charlie.
All right, see you later.
Great to.
Yeah, hi. I don't know the last time I saw you. I got to give you a hug.
Yeah. I'll see you later.
Yeah. Well, I'll be.
Thank you.
Please be blank, okay?
I will be blank.
That's blank, all right.
What do you guys?
Bye, everybody. We'll see you later.
Opportunities to change.
I hope you're there. I hope you're hearing.
Yeah, so I was really the other. It's okay. I really didn't mean that.
Yes, summer. And you do it every, that's the goal. Every like quarter, basically.
Oh, that's so fun.
No, we don't see each other.
Yeah, right. That's totally fun. Right. Okay. Well, you guys know.
I don't know, Renetta always is tasked to make it here, she's like. Like I learned this in Detroit. It's like, well, I don't.
You went and experienced this when we went to local progress in Detroit, Renetta and her reservations with food. Like, I'm just like, she's that person, and I'm like, I don't care. So I love good food, but I'm not gonna like investigate, you know? And I'm like, I'll figure it out. She definitely did. And so like she's tasked with like. Perfect. Yeah, and she enjoys doing it. So we're like, it's like, I'm right.
Right, plan, we don't plan financial plan.
She used to live over there. Oh, it's a barrier. She's still, and now she's in the general. Oh, she was in Durham. And then someone in
Yeah, it is something to look into.
So Jen,
And I
the key thing, Orange County politics, that I think we have to remind the public, U.S. Senator, that's the focus. U.S. Senator, Wood County Supreme Court. The rest is just, everybody dies in fun. These two things. And the last time my phone was just ding, 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 ding. And this morning, but it's not really.
Developing the plan, you know, that's the or,
And you might kind of add too about the local seats, I mean, the local state is like,
that every 4 years, right?
I'm just so
You know, it doesn't
glad
have to be.
we're actually filling these seats with elections. Because they've been
And that,
appointed.
but again,
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Maybe you can come on.
It's what middle school girls do. I've been there, done that. Oh, I would never attempt.
Is there a way to? So I just want to, okay, now it's on. All right. It's on. Sorry, it was a delay. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. So folks, we're putting up a link that you can get onto from your smartphones or devices. Go to pollev.com/fountainworks. So I want to give you a moment to go ahead and get logged in here. So pollev, it's up on the screen, pollev.com/fountainworks. And again, what we were wanting to do here is with the elected officials is we have some questions that we're going to want to walk through, and then we'll have a conversation about these. So just to all the staff that's on the call, just want to let you know, we're going to poll the electeds, and then when we go back and talk about this, we want to hear why the results came up. And we also want to make sure that staff has a chance after each of these questions to jump in and share your perspectives. So staff, while you won't be polled, we do want you to be part of this conversation here. So I'll just make sure that folks here in the room are logged in, just give you a moment to do that. And if anybody does have any issues or questions, please let me know.
Are we supposed to be starting a survey?
9 questions.
Yes, we're going to do it.
I don't think we're starting down.
Are we supposed to take it all at once or what?
So are they able to do? Oh, they're able to.
Do we just start?
Yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead and start. So Ellen and Craig, we're asking you not to vote. Just make sure, or any staff. We have ways of finding out if you voted. And if you have questions on any of these, if you want clarification on any of these, please just.
On question 3.
Okay.
Does there need to be a structure to support more collaboration within the municipalities?
In the municipalities.
In other words, Chapel Hill has to collaborate better with itself?
Or Chapel Hill. And Ellen, I might have you jump in here, but go ahead, Ellen. You
I
want
think
to?
the intention was within the county, among the municipalities.
Oh, within the counties, the Chapel Hill
Okay.
collaborating with.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Just feel free if you have any questions. And again, the purpose of this is to help us understand where there might need to be more change, what you want to remain the same with this. We'll, again, this is just a pulse check, and we're going to have a conversation about this to really dig in a little bit more. Wendy, are you logged in back there?
I finished it.
Oh, you're done.
Yeah, I'm done.
This is rapid fire. All right.
Yeah.
And again, here, question 9, voting representation where?
Voting representation on question 9. Wait, where is that? Oh, there it is. Either on the staff working group or on the board. So at either level, at the staff working group level or at the board level.
Which board are you talking about when you say
So that
board,
would be,
please, Warren?
so this would be like the governing board, or so for Durham, it would be Durham and the MPO and Go Triangle. So at that level, the elected, so where you sit, Will, does there need to be any changes in who's on your board, who sits on the board with you. Some of the, that might be something that you would say, oh, there needs to be more. There needs to be someone else. Maybe a city representative, for example. So we'll give everybody just another moment.
Maybe this is the question you just answered to Will, but question number 9.
Yeah.
Does there need to be any change in voting representation? So change to what?
Yeah. So
Not sure.
maybe not, maybe think about it this way. So there are 3 members on the staff working group, 3 representatives. So for you, it would be, so it would be Orange County, it'd be the
Hillsborough,
Oh,
so
Hillsborough, yeah.
Margaret.
Okay, so it would be at the staff working group level or at the board level. The current implementation plan has a set number of folks that make the decisions at each of those levels. So the question is the current way, is that about right? Or do you want to have more or less? Do you want to make any changes? Ellen, do you want to add clarification?
Yeah, I would think of it from the staff working group level primarily because the changing the MPO representation is an MPO decision, but it's kind of, outside of this process. That's a different governance study. So I think the intention was to primarily think about it from the staff working group level.
Thank you, Ellen. That clarifies it for me too, because same can be said of the Durham, Go Triangle Board.
Right. Yeah, I think that's written in state legislation, so it's not really up for debate here.
Who all is on the staff working group? I don't need you to name every person, but
so it's 3 members, I'm chair of the staff working group in Durham and a member representing Durham County. Ann Phillips represents the MPO. And Jay Hikus represents Go Triangle. And I think on Orange County, it's the same, except who's the Orange County? Theo Letman, yeah.
OPT director is the county representative.
Okay. Gotcha.
So there's no cities, no institutions.
I was really getting confused because suddenly I thought I was interpreting wrong. I was thinking about the technical committee and I was like, why are we talking about that? So now
Does that make sense?
yes, I'm with you.
Okay.
I understand.
All right.
If we could just add, I think the staff working group can be viewed as a very limited technical committee, very limited.
All right. I think everyone has had a chance to answer these questions. And so again, staff, we're going to ask you to go ahead and chime in. Maddie, if we can just share. So for the first question, does there need to be more structure to support collaboration? For those who said more, can you just share a little bit more about why you put that? The one who put more. Go ahead.
Because I've only been on it for 11 months on the MPO, and we've had one meeting with both. And so that might not be enough.
Wendy, go ahead.
Yeah, and I would say that the practice now that we have of actually having two meetings, joint meetings, that was actually implemented by us just over the past few years. We actually never used to meet together. So this is actually something, the collaboration that was initiated and that TJ Cog has helped facilitate and has resulted in joint policies and things like that. That wasn't laid out in any type of, it's not actually even codified in any type of agreement or anything. It's just something that we've been doing. So that definitely points to the need that we do need to have policies and structures around that. And as you said, James, that, how can we do more, right?
Anyone else want to comment here?
Well, this is Will again. Building on what Wendy just said, I think there are a lot of overlaps and there's certainly a lot of integration needs regarding transit and other mobility projects that would benefit from a stronger hands across the water between the DCAC, MPO, and Campo. We do that, I think, pretty well. I just think we need to do more of it and move in that direction incrementally, if not more dramatically than that. We've talked for years about the possibility of merging the two, and that question will probably come up again as the fog clears on the current census data and how that's going to impact the possibility of the footprints of both MPOs.
I want to open it up to staff if folks want to add anything to why you think there should be more structure, or if you want to make a case for less or status quo. Open it up to staff. Go ahead and just type Q. Okay, go ahead, Meg.
Alan was about to jump.
Okay, we'll do Meg and then we'll do Ellen. Go ahead, Meg.
Sure. Hi, all. Meg Scully, planning manager at Go Triangle, but I had spent a number of years at the DCH CMPO, and before that, a number of years managing Durham County Access. So I have some experience across the board. I just want to remind everybody that the staff work group membership was originally designed to mirror the ILA signatories. And so that's why it was limited to the 3, because that's who was defined as the ILA signatories in the counties. And then just another quick point of clarification. I may have misheard, but I think there was some back and forth about what the financial plan was. The financial plan is actually the transit plan. It's the multi-year plan. And then the budget, the annual budget, comes from that and is what we call the work plans. And so just another little point, the financial plan is actually approved by all 3 signatories in each of the 3 counties. So a little more clarification. And then regarding the MPOs, I'm all about regional collaboration and partnership. I just do want to refer back to something that Ellen said at the very beginning of this session, and that is that on the western side of the triangle, there is a very long history of extremely strong transit ridership for somewhere in North Carolina. You can't compare to obviously the real transit heavy regions of the country, but per capita, Durham and Orange have in the state. By far, there's no comparison. So that doesn't come by luck. That comes by lots and lots of interest, many years of planning, and a community that has always supported it. So when I hear about merging the MPO, which I agree with Will completely, we'll see what happens when the dust settles after the census. We do have to be aware of some of the priorities from our MPOs. But anyway, my 2 cents. Thank you for letting me share.
We'll love to have you continue to chime in as we go through this. Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Meg. Yeah, I misspoke earlier about the financial plan. So we just don't usually use that term. So, but on this, like it's been talked about, right? Wake County has a different structure. They have a lot of policies, procedures that they follow. And I'll just say, in the past year of me working in this role, I've learned a lot from reaching out to them and learning more about that. But I don't know that everyone on the Durham and Orange side knows that much. It takes effort because we're not in the same MPO and we don't have multiple meetings per week talking to each other like we kind of already do on the Durham Orange side through the MPO process. So I would say more would be helpful.
That would be a reason for more.
Yeah.
From the staff perspective. Okay. We're going to jump to this next question here. And a little bit of a switch. Does there need to be structure to support more collaboration regionally between Durham and Orange? And again, if there are some reasons to have more structure for this, anybody want that's different from what we just covered? Anybody want to add to this about why you put more? Go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, I think that we have to get to a point where things are going to outlast the staff and the elected officials that are here at this time. I mean, we're really fortunate, like amongst elected officials, we all get along well, we all like each other, right? You know, we have similar values, you know, same thing with the staff. But you know, things change, and we need to have a system where if things change, you know, things are still going to be okay, and things that were approved are going to get implemented, or there's some safeguards to that, you know, the institutional knowledge or whatever is not, and the relationships are not just what's holding everything together. That it, you know, can stand the test of time, I guess. And then I think also, especially when it comes to regional projects, we need that structure, because like even right now, as we're each updating our transit plans, it took, you know, Sally Green, one of the county commissioners on the Orange County side, to like send out an email like, hey, we all should be talking about what are we doing with BRT, like on 15501. And, you know, she pulled together a meeting. That really shouldn't need to happen. And, you know, so just some of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, go.
I think, you know, particularly as between, you know, Durham and Orange, I mean, if you drive from Chapel Hill to Durham, you can't tell when you've left one and gotten to the other. And that's only going to become more so in the coming years, right? You know, we really need to start recognizing, you know, from a planning and governance perspective, what has already happened on the ground, which is that we are becoming, you know, one transit market, and, you know, and we have to start at a variety of levels planning more closely together. I mean, you know, there were some initial conversations, and hopefully it'll get funded through the transit plan, about bringing one of the Chapel Hill Transit and one of the Durham Transit routes together, you know, to meet at the same place with common schedules. But the reality is, you know, if you think about right now, Chapel Hill Transit is essentially optimized for a circle around Chapel Hill and Carrboro, and Durham is optimized for a circle around Durham. But what we should be thinking about is, what if you drew that circle around Durham, Carrboro, and Chapel Hill? Now, how do you optimize transit in that larger circle rather than trying to optimize transit in two separate circles?
So let me ask you all, if it could potentially take more time and resources if you've got more structure, could potentially, does that affect your opinion?
Price worth, well, how much? But I mean, within reason, yeah, it's a price worth paying if it's a reasonable price.
I think I would say, I said not sure. And I think in part because for this one and the previous question, I also said not sure, because I think my impulse is to say yes, because we should be, we are a region, and we do, you know, that transportation is just so important to how we all rise and fall together. It's just so essential. And at the same time, I am reluctant to add another layer of something when the ones that we have seem like they're in flux, and we're trying to figure out how they're working and how they can work better. So that's my hesitation. And I think I would be remiss in saying that if I didn't say that we could definitely benefit from more collaboration between Durham and Orange. And I am enough of a regionalist to say that I am fully in support of the understanding that we've got to really figure out that connection in the southern part of the county. We've got to a lot of resources there. But Orange is a really different county. You know, we have a whole northern part of the county, of which, you know, Hillsborough is right in the middle. And those people have transportation needs too. And so I just, I think there's part of me that's like, how will those people be included in that collaboration?
Does anybody want to make the case for status quo in terms of structure? Yeah. Okay, I want to open up.
I kind of want to say yes. Because I go to so many meetings, you know, like with all of these same people all the time. And I think as staff, a lot of us feel like we're talking to each other all the time. Perhaps it could be more effective, right? But I kind of feel like we have the structure there. So
You have I think you've got the informal structure. I don't think you've got the legal structure so that money can't be spent easily be spent across county borders. I think that at the end of the day, you know, you have different transit operators and we don't have means of connecting them well. It's not just at the MPO level where that collaboration can take place. It's among elected officials, and as Wendy pointed out, you know, hey, Wendy, it's good to see you once a year. You know, so I think we can do better.
So Meg, do you want to go ahead and weigh in on this?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with Ellen. I agree with Michael. We can do better, but I do think the MPO affords the structure to do it. I think one recommendation I would make is to beef up the dedicated staff for transit at the MPO and empower them to do this sort of regional coordination, but within that structure that's already there. I think that would go a long way to supporting this sort of coordination. And then some of the detail about sharing costs and that sort of thing can certainly need to be worked out in any of the plans that we do. But I think the structure is there. I think it just needs to be supported more fully. And I think a dedicated transit staff person at the MPO could get us a long way.
Thanks, Meg.
Hey, Meg, this is Will. Is that, that sounds very analogous to what we're doing in Wake County.
Well, in Wake County, it's specifically for TPAC. And the MPO does have a staff work group administrator. But I mean somebody who specifically plans transit. So even beyond what we could do with our local transit tax and plans. And for example, Go Triangle supports some of those functions, and we're happy to do that and always have. And then there have been staff in the past who could do more transit related work, but I think a dedicated new position for transit specifically would be very helpful. And then obviously, well, yes, I agree that they could then play the role that some of the transit staff over in Campo do.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and we're going to move to the next question. And here, pretty strongly, does there need to be more structure for collaboration within the municipalities in each county? Anybody want to, jump in on this?
Yeah, I think I put not sure because at least in Durham County, there's only one county and one municipality. So I didn't think that question was applicable in the same way that it would be for like Orange or Wake.
Okay.
I think that the county and the city could collaborate more, but that's a separate question.
Yeah. Any staff want to weigh in on this? Ellen?
I agree with Javier. Like it's much simpler in Durham. So this is where we might want to consider the different context in each county in our ILAs. They don't have to be exactly the same.
You could really open up a can of worms and talk about unifying Durham City and Durham County, but that's a whole other thing.
Will?
Yeah, did you call me?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about it. This says in each county, but why not more collaboration within the municipalities in both counties? That is, consider it as Michael was describing, one area.
All right, we'll go through this next question here. Change to the community engagement during the staff and governing boards. So what kinds of changes? We had some minor changes, significant changes, and then not sure. So do you want to see any change in terms of community engagement? Anybody want to weigh in when you think about your structure at the staff level governing? Yeah.
Well, I guess what I would say is, I don't know, I'm not going to say it's wonderful, but there is, community engagement when we're developing the transit plans. But the transit plans that last, we revised every 4 years or so. But in terms of the annual work plans, I mean, at least in Orange County, if there is community engagement, it is the bare minimum. I mean, it is completely perfunctory.
For the implementation plan, do you want the way it's structured, or do you wanting to see more community engagement, either at the staff level, at the governing board level?
Somewhere.
Or no change? Yeah, go ahead.
I said significant change just because I think in Durham, we're faced with some pretty, the city of Durham is the owner of the major transit operator, but the tax and the plan is held by the county. And so I think the average resident has no real clarity on any of these structures, period. So then when you're trying to figure out how to engage folks, I think that in Durham, we just have a lot that we have to figure out and get through.
I agree with that. Like through the transit plan process, I've had a lot of discussions with groups and neighborhoods, and they're all like, who's making this decision? Like, I don't get it. Like just describing this and giving them an effective way to have their voice heard is very difficult.
So Ellen, you would make the case for what?
I would say significant changes. So it could be more clear, it's just make sure that residents understand and know how they can have a voice in this process. Because right now it's just this very complicated bureaucracy of committees that they don't know who's who.
And I think that it lets, quite frankly, electeds off the hook around accountability, because you can say, well, this isn't our problem because so-and-so, and vice versa. And so then residents, and especially in Durham, we know that the average bus rider is some of their community members from our most marginalized communities. So then we are really burdening them with an unfair ask. And it's not fair, and we have to figure it out.
And I'd say, this is the key question across everything we do in government, that trying to get public engagement from everyone, when just how you expressed it, when other folks are working 2 jobs, they have children they have to put to bed, and they don't necessarily read the emails from the county or even know they exist. And this is just a core essential question of how do we engage with our public better.
Wendy, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is just, as I'll agree with James said, goes for all government in general. I think that we've learned a lot during the pandemic, and especially in Durham, we've had this whole different strategy, getting away from things like surveys and, instead trying to do focus groups, more qualitative engagement, and the idea of ambassadors. And so I think really rethinking what does engagement mean. And then I think there's the whole issue just that transportation is the most complicated area of government, I think, after when DSS is up there too. But, because when you're dealing with something that involves local, state, federal funding and all these bureaucracies, and it's hard. I've really encountered this with the light rail, like people don't understand. And then there's a lot of distrust and a lot of blame. And so how do we integrate education and engagement at the same time and be able to explain what we're doing? And so I think it has to be like an ongoing communication strategy as well.
Can I ask staff to weigh in? Any thoughts on this? One want to make a case for no change? Staff level?
This is Aaron from the MPO. I certainly wouldn't make a change for a case for no change. I would agree. We want to continue to improve our community engagement, both within our transit functions as well as others. Just want to make sure it's very aware to our elected officials that it is a very staff intensive way of doing things. It certainly provided, as we've gone through the Durham Transit Plan, it's certainly provided some definite benefits, but it is expensive and it is resource intensive. So just want to make sure that's aware to everyone as we move forward and try to implement these programs.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, let's go to, we'll jump to the next question here. So this is around stakeholder engagement. So we think about institutions during the staff, the working group, the governing board functions. Can folks weigh in on this? What would you like to see? What changes would you like to see? What does that look like? Start with the elected officials.
Well, when you don't know your options, you don't have any. So I don't know what it would look like. I don't know what the options are.
Go ahead, Steve.
I think there's a whole range of voices that, certainly when I look back on some of the things related to light rail, there was a whole range of voices that were really not heard very well. Certainly community riders, what we think of as the community. But at the same time, I think the business community or the university community, the people who drive the need for transit, if you think about transit as one of the major functions of transit is getting people to their jobs, I think there was virtually no input from the people who have those jobs, who provide those jobs and what their needs were. So I think we really need to think about stakeholders in a much broader way, rather than just sort of assuming that we as electeds are all knowing and all wise.
Adam, you want to go ahead and
I just want to remind everybody in your current staff working group bylaws, they do highlight several institutions that are invited to the table, such as TJCOG, some of the universities and the hospitals, but they don't have any official say. And I think that's a really interesting point that you just made, Mr. Parker, about having some advocacy groups present at the table in some official capacity to have a say to represent those that may not have to get a chance to say something.
Will, do you want to jump in? Any perspective on this?
No, well, yes and no. I'd like to be more positive, but I frequently find that there's a lot of passivity among potential institutions and potential stakeholder engagement. And it only comes to the fore when something doesn't go as people imagined it might, such as Durham Orange Light Rail. We can invite them to the table, and I think we should continue to, and I think we can entice them to and urge them to very strongly. I agree with what Michael and others have said very much, but my experience is that people don't always want to play, and they have a choice, of course. All we can do is try to make it available to them. But when it's a vulnerability, I think that anybody in a public sector role, whether they're an elected official or staff, always has. My background as a management consultant has been primarily in the private sector. And this has been not a revelation exactly, but certainly interesting to me over the last decade or so to understand this at a visceral level. So I think, yes, we need a lot of stakeholder engagement. The institutions, especially ones like Duke and other universities, should be urged to come and enticed, as I said, if possible. You can tell, I think, from the tone of my voice, how strongly I feel about this. I'm just not sure how to do it effectively. We do it repeatedly. We try to do it in Wake County too. And it's very difficult. But the methods for doing that continue to evolve, and I continue to be hopeful that we, I also agree with what Aaron said. There's a lot of resources required to do this, and we need to budget for those, time and money, if we really want it to happen.
Yeah, Wendy.
Yeah, I think again, it gets back to thinking about some structures that we might need. I think when we think about transportation, I totally agree with what's been said. What Michael said, that, you know, at the end of the day, this is about connecting people to jobs, connecting to people to education, connecting people to healthcare. So all of those institutions really need to be part of the conversation, and also their responsibility to be a part of the solution as well. And the understanding how this impacts their, you know, whether it's employers or patients or students or whatever. But I think it involves education too, and engagement. So I don't know, maybe we need to have a advisory group, you know, that is made up of these stakeholders that meets periodically, where we can have sharing information, education, and then providing that input. So it's like a two-way street too. We can't just go to people when we want something. You know, we have to build those relationships.
I would second what Wendy said. It can't be episodic. It's got to be an ongoing relationship. It's got to be an ongoing commitment. If you know, it's not like, okay, in year 4, we're developing a new plan, so we'll gear up for community engagement. We'll get the plan built and then we'll wind it down. You know, you've got to have that sustained effort involving stakeholders of all stripes in these kinds of things, and it becomes everybody's routine rather than an episodic event.
Okay, we're going to jump down to the next question here. And again, this is really helpful just in terms of enabling staff, enabling a consultant to come back with some options for you. Any changes needed to the annual budget development and decision-making process? So want to open it up to a few of you said some minor changes. Half of you said significant changes. What kinds of things are you thinking about here? Let's understand a little bit more. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Well, first, I think there needs to be just understanding. I mean, as we heard, you know, an hour or so ago, there wasn't one of us in this room who actually understood how it worked. That is a problem. Number one. Number two, I think then from my personal perspective, the fact that, you know, Go Triangle is the only decision maker around these annual budgets, you know, I think is for me problematic. And then lastly, it's been, at least again, from where I sit, I have not seen any, much less significant community involvement in this annual budget making process.
You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I agree with what Michael said. We need much more transparency. We need to understand, you know, what are we paying for? What do we get for that? It needs to be something that is, you know, equitable across different governments. And, you know, there needs to be really strong performance measures that are tied to the allocations. You know, and then we need to be able to, you know, report out. And this ties back to what a comment that Brenda made earlier about, you know, people in the community not knowing, like, what are we spending money on and what are we getting for that money? You know, so it's all of that is linked.
Thanks, Wendy. Sandra, go ahead if you want to jump in with a comment here or perspective.
Yes, I think part of this is perhaps, again, not being real clear on how the process works. By the time this budget gets to the Go Triangle board, it is simply Go Triangle pulling together the information that has been recommended by the staff working group. So Go Triangle does not create the budget. What happens is the staff working group is really where a lot of that, where the decision making is made, and it's a recommendation to our board, which basically you don't hear anybody arguing with. The staff working group has supported it. So it sounds like before it gets to Go Triangle or whoever ends up approving it, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the front end. It comes from the work plan. We sit in a room, we make decisions, or the appropriate individuals in the room at the staff working group make recommendations on what projects should be funded and approved for that fiscal year. Go Triangle takes that information, puts it into a budget format, and takes it to the board. So I think where a lot of the disconnect is maybe what happens within the decision-making at the staff working group level and how input is being taken in to guide what we simply consolidate into a budget. We also do an annual report. There's also progress reports that the MPO and Go Triangle put together. So there's a lot of information that comes out on how we're progressing on the projects, but perhaps that is not going to a broad enough audience either. But there is a lot of reporting, a quarterly reporting and annual reporting that goes into the performance, to the budget, and to the work plan, which drives that budget.
Can I just comment on that, Sandra, and ask you to clarify that same process is true for Wake County, if I'm not correct?
Yes,
TPAC, the Transit Planning Advisory Committee, tells us what the AWP is, the annual work plan, as they have devised it. And then they say, here's the amount of money that we say you can spend, and you tell us how you're going to execute it. We have no authority at all to change that.
Correct. That's correct.
Thanks, Sandra. Any questions or just reactions to Sandra's point? Ellen, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Sandra made excellent points there about how it works. One thing that seems clear to me, kind of, and in part is informed by the meeting I had this morning on finance, right, is that at the staff working group level, you have mostly people like me who are planners, right, kind of transportation focused people making decisions there. But there's a huge financial part of this, and that we would really benefit from having more financial experts reviewing this on an annual basis from different organizations, so that's one thing I would like to see.
How to do this, how to make this work. Okay. Yes, Stephen.
Yeah, but I think Will inadvertently highlighted a really important difference. Whereas in Wake County, you've got the TPAC, which has representatives from all 12 municipalities, and I think NC State, although I'm fuzzy on that one, making a recommendation. In Orange and in Durham, the staff working group has no representation from any of the municipalities. And so then, it's basically 3 people plus others who get to attend but not vote. And I think that at a minimum, broadening out the staff working group then would give me at least a lot more confidence that the annual work plan had been, well thought out. And I still believe, and I'm not a county commissioner, but effectively, although, the money, Go Triangle is effectively the banker, right? They collect all the money and they, hold it, manage it, give it out in accordance with the wishes of the plan. But at the end of the day, it's kind of the county's money. At least that's how I think about it. And so I think the fact that the county commissioners don't have a role in authorizing the expenditure of, millions of dollars of what is effectively, money that they have, if not a legal, then a moral stewardship over, I think for me is problematic.
Thank you, Michael.
Wendy, do you want to just jump in so folks online can do it?
Oh, okay.
I just said, thank you, Michael, for that last point.
Anyone else online on this? Okay, Maddie, let's go to the next question. We've just got a few more. Thanks for hanging in there. I know this is a lot to go through. So the reporting on the financial plan, most of you said just some minor changes. Anyone want to just say a little bit more? Anyone feel strongly about reporting on the financial plan? Go ahead, Alan.
I mean, I would agree with minor changes. I do think we want to make sure that we're monitoring the resiliency of our plan moving forward, that, you know, costs to go up, costs keep going up, right? That always seems to continuously happen, right? And we need to make sure that we can deliver what's in the plan. If we can't, that's really not, that breeds of this lack of community trust, because we end up saying we can do something and then pulling it back and saying, no, whoops, we can't. And we need to avoid that. So I guess a bit more like risk assessment and evaluation of how things may change in the future would be helpful in the reporting of the financial plan.
That goes along with potentially bringing some more financial folks to the table. Go ahead, Brenda. Do you want to, oh, Brenda is jumping off. All right. Brenda's going to have a good weekend. All right, we're going to.
Yeah, have a good weekend, and I gotta go get my shot.
Oh, yeah, booster.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move to the next one. I think we have two more. Yeah, does there need to be any changes to the performance reporting processes? Anyone feel strongly about this? We'll open it up to either staff or electeds. Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, I think it just all ties into everything else. We need a format that is going to be understandable, consistent, you know, just whatever the product is, you know, we need some type of a dashboard, you know, those type of things, so that, you know, for the public, for elected officials, you know, we just need something that's consistent and easy to understand and read.
Some heads nodding. Thumbs up. All right. Yep. Anyone online want to jump in?
So this is Brian. I just want to make just a quick comment, I guess, on performance reporting. I've heard through a couple of these conversations, comments about metrics and other things to make sure that we're getting what we're investing in. And I think, again, all fine stuff. You know, we do that on a regular basis with our local transit plan, and we do it with our, you know, annual budget. But I also think as we look at this, we need to make sure that if we're doing performance reporting and have indicators, that they need to be context sensitive or relevant. What I mean by that is the Chapel Hill Transit Partners, supported by the town of Chapel Hill, the town of Carrboro, and the university, early on said, hey, here are the things that we want to use transit plan money for. And they identified very specific things, such as investing in Sunday service, investing in service to communities that are underserved, and investing in kind of non-peak hour service. And those services is very intentional and very thoughtful, and there are very specific reasons for doing that. But those services are going to perform much differently than our peak hour services or other peak hour services, those sort of things. So we need to, if we look at those, we need to make sure and say, hey, maybe because we've invested in this route here in this neighborhood and it's carrying 15 people per hour, it perhaps is not underperforming compared to a route that's carrying 65 people per hour because of these reasons. So again, I think using broad performance measures and metrics can sometimes be a little bit challenging when you're investing in things that maybe you wouldn't invest in if you didn't have these resources available to the transit systems, or you have got to be thoughtful about those, again, to make sure that you're really measuring not only the value of the transit performance, but also the value to the community and to the customers in the neighborhoods.
I want to get Wendy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that was
an interesting point Brian brought up, and I guess my response would be, are there, for instance, national benchmarks on off-peak hour, usage or, I mean, absolutely context is really important. I just looked at a profile from Future NC on every county on educational attainment, and for every performance measure, they gave you what the state average, what the national average was on that point. So, yeah, I think that's an important point. Thank you, Brian.
Stephen, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think it ties back to when you first make the plan to do those things, goals should be embedded within them in the first place, right? So if you're investing in Route X, you have an expectation of what ridership you'll get so that you're always doing your performance measurements against the goals that you set in the first place rather than some broader, non-specific goals. It's if the goal is in 2022, we're going to put up 40 bus shelters, then you report how you managed against, did you get to the 40 bus shelters? But you need to build the goals in the first place, and then that gives you what you report your performance against.
I completely agree with Michael. This is Will, that any performance reporting process should have well-defined benchmarks, quantitatively defined if possible, and certainly goals related to the period of time in which you're reporting.
Okay, we'll go to the last. Okay, this is the last one. Does there need to be any change in the voting representation? Open it up. Your thoughts about why you voted the way you did. What kinds of changes would you like to see?
It's Will again. Was it Sandra? I'm sorry, I don't know who to attribute the remark to. Said, or maybe it was Wendy, who said differentiating between TPAC and the staff working group. It seems to me that the working group maybe is not representative and needs more representation from the bodies that it is speaking for.
Yes, that was me. Yes.
Thank you, Sandra.
Yeah, I need to hear a little more about why you think there should be some change in voting.
Well, I can only relate it to our experience again with TPAC. Those, as I think Sandra said, in White County, we have representatives from each of the 12 municipalities, as well as North Carolina State and other stakeholders, significant stakeholders in our area. And they are officially appointed by staff who are appointed by each of those agencies or municipalities. And they know what they've been told to do, and they report back. There's a lot of bi-directional communication and direction. And that occurs with regularity. So when they come to the TPAC, they're well informed. They know what the limits of their discretion are from their appointed bodies, and it results in a lot of clarity and very good discussion. And I'm not criticizing the staff working group. I think that they're probably just constituted in a way, as I pointed out earlier, that's a vestige of an earlier period and needs to be changed so that it is more representative, and especially more representative in a not just direct but more current way, so that you have an ongoing incremental understanding of what the body they represent wants to do. An example of that in Durham Orange Light Rail was Duke. It changed its mind, but that didn't happen quickly. It apparently happened over some time. They just sort of veered away from supporting Durham Orange Light Rail, and I don't think that anyone understood exactly how far they had veered from their original commitment. But had there been more regular and more direct representation, that would have been known up front as soon as that began to happen.
Look at Stephen, and then Meg had a comment. Stephen, go ahead.
Michael.
I'm sorry, Michael. Sorry, Michael.
No, I think I've alluded to it. I don't need to beat it over, beat it to death. I think at least in Orange County, there are 4 municipalities at a minimum, and then we can decide whether in the case of Chapel Hill Transit, is that a separate representation, or is that, they basically the Chapel Hill representative, details to be worked out. And personally, UNC and or UNC Healthcare, I think, are major economic drivers for Chapel Hill and the entire county. They have, by far the largest employers in the county, and, their transportation needs need to be understood.
And Meg, I want to go ahead and make sure, I think it was Meg. Yep, go ahead, Meg.
Hi, I just wanted, at least this is how I saw it play out, and those who were around at the same time or understand it differently can correct me. But 12 years ago, 10 years ago, well, 12 years ago, when Durham and Orange were working hard on getting the initial financial plans and referenda on the ballot, they were, of course, the first to go, and Wake didn't have the political support until several years later, and went through the process, and by design somewhat pulled themselves out of having significant impact, so to say, because they now just have the 2 governing bodies, Campo and Go Triangle, with the TPAC advising. So on the western side, there were always the 3 governing bodies, the counties, the MPO, and Go Triangle. So it's, I guess I would just encourage not necessarily a direct comparison, and also an understanding that to get where Wake got, Wake County reduced its control, so to speak, over the process. They no longer approve a transit plan on their own. They approve it as a member of Campo and a member of Go Triangle Board and a participant in TPAC recommending it. So
I would say I completely agree with Meg. This was a purposeful decision that Wake County made, the Wake County Commission made. It's worked out well in Wake County.
Wendy, I noticed you're nodding. I'm just curious if you want to comment.
Yeah, I think it gets back to recognizing that there are unique conditions in each of the counties, just as if we each have our unique populations, our challenges, our transit riders are different, our transit needs are different. And yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think what I hope is that you all are looking at, well, what are the kind of crystallizing some of the best practices that we see, not only in Wake County, but in other areas of the country, that you can bring back to us.
Our job here isn't to figure out how to do it, but just to understand what's important. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in and mostly an echo, but really appreciating Meg's comments, because she said explicitly by saying what happened in Wake County, with Wake County ceding some control, because, I said significant change, and what I was thinking was what Michael, said about, we've got all these municipalities, we've got Chapel Hill Transit, and all of us have so much going on. And I think we're all in periods of real energy and trying to think about our communities and plan for a future where there's better transportation broadly defined. But I also see that I can certainly see the county's point of like, this money comes to the county, so I get that. But I think that there could be a real benefit if all of us had more of a say in how things move.
And that is how it works in Wake County. That conscious ceding and control said, we trust the municipalities who are going to be represented on TPAC to make these decisions. They didn't see total oversight at all, but it works extremely well. And all the municipalities have a say in how that money is spent. at the direction of the Wake County Commission.
Wendy, go ahead. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, and this again, it gets a little granular, but I think that we as elected officials, whether you're representing a town or a city or a county, we have very different perspectives because of the services that we each provide and who we're serving. And so I think the tension is that, at least what I feel is the way I've always interpreted my role with transit dollars is that, you know, just to simplify it, that the city has the greatest responsibility for transportation within the city, whereas my job as a county commissioner is to zoom out and make sure that we are doing the regional connections and making sure that our residents can get to jobs and places outside the county. So I think there's a tension there between that.
Just a segue to say, I apologize. I have to step out. I have to be home to pick up a kid back in Hillsborough. So I am sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, we're very close to being done, so thank you. So we know it is, we're getting towards 4 o'clock here on a Friday. We did want to make sure that if there was anything else, having gone through this conversation today, again, just recapping, this is where you've been, this is how the current implementation agreement is constructed. This is what you want to achieve, both the impact and with this agreement. We wanted to really understand what are the kinds of things you're looking for in terms of options that could be brought back to you. So is there anything, just as we wrap up, that you want to make sure that the consulting team or the staff, anything that you want to make sure your colleagues know, your perspective coming out of today, like what's really important to you as you think about coming up with a new implementation agreement or a revamped implementation agreement? Anything? I'll just kind of do around the room. Yeah.
I guess what I wonder about, I thought about it and I don't have an answer and I don't know if it even makes any sense. But, you know, the ILAs we're looking at are county specific, they're intra-county. And I guess my question is, you know, we touched on it when we talked about in your earlier questions about, you know, greater collaboration between the counties. And again, I just put it out there as purely as a question. Is there a need for some kind of agreement, for agreements between the counties, even if they're not building a project together? You know, ultimately, should the commuter rail proceed, there will obviously be some kind of agreements between Wake and Durham and how that will be managed and how that will be paid for and all that stuff. But I wonder, apart from specific projects that will be jointly serving and jointly funded by more than one county, even apart from that, if there needs to be some kind of decision-making structure, agreement, something that more formally promotes collaboration between various counties.
Let me just do around the room. I know, Will, you've got to, let me actually go to you, Will, because you may need to sign off. Go ahead. Any final thoughts or guidance that you want to give as we wrap up today?
Well, I find myself in, again, in agreement with Michael and what he said. I'd like to add that, maybe bring it up a little bit and say, we're all in this together. And that's what I want everyone to feel as confident in Durham and Orange County, not only about their own county and about working together with the other, but in working together with us regionally, as we do in Wake County, that I'm happily surprised to say that our system has worked really well. I don't mean that it should be endorsed to you as a solution. What I'm saying is whatever solution comes, that it should be one that you feel confident in, you feel as good about, so that we can all proceed together to make regional transit a reality. That's why we're all here. That's what we all want. So that's my overall goal and what I would like to see come out of this exercise.
Well, thank you. I just want to kind of just see any final thoughts or guidance as you are finishing this conversation today.
Not in particular. I think that there's been pretty broad sentiment around more participation, more equalizing, and I think a lot more connection to the community in general and bringing in residents, because at the end of the day, this is their money. And so we need to make sure that they are involved and understand what we're doing.
Thank you.
After 3 years of being a commissioner, and I was on the Burlington Graham MPO for 2 years and now this one, I find all of it very, very confusing. And I am a CPA, so it does appeal to me to follow the money. But I feel like what we said, the things we want to do needs to be at the top. And instead of, two routes, right? You tweak things. Okay, you can tweak things. We're paying you a lot of money to do that. What are some other, if they exist, new things, totally different ways to organize, totally different ways to consider accomplishing these goals while we are limited by the finances that involves all the towns, the users of transit, as well as then the employers. And that's way beyond me. But that's what I think we're asking for. And using Wake's example as a possibility, or Atlanta, so anywhere in the U.S., international. I thought your charge is much bigger in a way that then promotes regional transit opportunities.
Wendy?
Yeah, I think just to kind of echo what everyone says is that what I'm hoping for is recommendations that are just going to facilitate us all working together, whether it's elected officials or staff, the community, other stakeholders, what's going to facilitate us working together to create a strong regional transit system.
Just want to say, as we wrap up here, Ellen or Craig, anything that you wanted to make sure any other questions that you had or anything that you wanted to say in closing?
I just want to thank everyone for their participation. It was a rough start, but thanks for sticking through it. I think we started to get into a flow, and that was really good, of collaborating and sharing, our thoughts. So I think this was a really good first step, and I appreciate everyone's time on a Friday afternoon. I know it was a significant amount of time, but I think it's giving us a lot of good guidance that staff will then, take and discuss and figure out how to do it. So thank you.
Similar to Ellen, thank everybody's participation. Our role here today was primarily to be all ears, and get the perspective, because we're in it so much. We really need to hear what's getting out, what other people are hearing or not hearing. So I think we had some good feedback today. And, we have realized that anecdotally, over the last few years. So I think the consultants have heard this information, staff has heard it. I think other staff that was online today, on their contribution too, but we'll take this information. Of course, there'll be minutes of this meeting, and we'll start, formulating, what some of the improvements could be. We do have a start. That's the old agreement. And that's what we'll say, what sections need to change and what don't need to change. But you would expect, after 10 years with the discontinuance of the light rail, that agreement can change appreciably, with a new plan going forward. Again, thank you. And we bid you adieu unless there's any closing remarks from the consultant.
No, we'll just say thanks. And again, sorry for the rough start, and want to wish everyone a great, happy Friday and weekend. Thanks so much for folks online. And we'll go ahead and we'll adjourn.
Hey, thank you, Warren and Adam. Did a great job. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
I didn't miss a whole lot. Yes.
No, you didn't miss. You missed like the initial opening. Trying to describe current agreement with that.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of information.
Yeah, that's what was sent out to us.
Yeah, yeah.